On our last project, we restored this old Morris chair. Came out really nice, but you know what? Sitting out here in the middle of the room, it looks kind of stark. So we decided that it needs a table. Similar to these chairs, this has a complementary table. And so what we want to do is have a table that we can have that matches the design of this table, but also matches this Morris chair. So it's very difficult to go online or to go to a store and find a table that specifically meets a need without making a compromise. Or you can make a table. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make a table similar to this that has a top and a shelf, but it's going to complement the Morris chair. It's going to be a half a circle. Instead of a square just sitting out in the middle of nowhere, we're going to do a semicircle table right here. It's going to be about 25 inches tall. It'll have a second little shelf on it just like this table. And like these tables, to try to tie the designs together, we're going to taper the bottom of the legs in this fashion right here. So it's still a square leg, but we're going to do that little taper on the end there to make them all match. When we get all done with the fabrication, then we'll stain it to match this Morris chair and put some complementary little doohickeys on it, some little accent pieces on the shelf, so it looks really nice. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's take you out to the workshop and show you how I've mocked it up. All right, so we're out here in the workshop, set up a little table. Went to the hardware store and got some premium pine. Not all furniture needs to be made from hardwood or oak. This is not the 70s. So what we've got here is I guess what this is they call it a 10-inch, but it's a 9.5-inch wide piece of premium pine. This plank is 4 feet, and I've measured off 18-inch arc. If you can see from here to there, an 18-inch arc. It's a semicircle, so it's 9 inches by 18 inches. What I'm going to do here is we're going to take this 1x4 material and we're going to make a box underneath the archway, and that'll be a support for these legs that are going to stand up. So you can see right here what I've done is I marked off where 3/4 of an inch is from the edge here, and I did that equal places. You see, you take the center of the circle and you find your different archways, 45 degrees and 90 degrees and 45. It's basically an octagon or half of an octagon. Separated 3/4 of an inch over here, 3/4 of an inch at each of the joint points, and just kind of sketched it out so I can get an idea of what my angles are, what my distances are, and get an idea of how I'm going to interact with the legs in this. It's a round surface with an octagonal surface and then a square surface. So you have to kind of figure out how you're going to interact those. So on this center leg, it's going to be perpendicular to the 90-degree point right here, and it'll be 3/4 of an inch off from that. I'm going to put a notch in the leg to allow this 1x4 to go through the leg and back out the other way. This miter is a little less critical, but we're going to miter that. This should give me a nice flat surface right here, and this will disappear into the leg. But the leg will have plenty of down surface so that it can be structural. Nothing going on here, just a quick miter. This leg here, we're going to put a notch for this diagonal piece to go in, but this back piece is going to go flush right to the leg. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me the ability to have a lot of surface for this leg to interact with the tabletop. All right, so let's go ahead and start cutting these up. When I get to the next part here, we're going to mock up the distance for the second shelf, but I'll do that after I've cut this so I can get a good idea of where I want that shelf to interact with the legs as it comes down to that part. All right, so let's get the jigsaw running. All right, so got everything cut here. It doesn't matter what kind of saw that you use, whether you use a jigsaw, the fine blade, or some other kind of jig or a rig. anytime that you're cutting an irregular shape through wood, and you transition from cross-cut to cutting with the grain, the saw blade is going to act funny and it'll start to tear. So what I like to do is just cut a little bit beyond and then bring it back true with a sander. So you see, set up my sander here, made sure that it was perpendicular and plumb, and I'm just going to go ahead and run down the line here and get a nice smooth run all along here. See how it goes from the rough cut to the smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and then we'll get to the next step. All right, so for the second shelf, we're going to notch the legs 1/2 of an inch in from the inside edge of where the legs are. You see, I've made a mark here for where, just to kind of symbolize for a mock-up where I need to put that, right? So I measured the distance between here and here to find out what the radius is going to be for that inside leg, or for that inside shelf, so that I can go ahead and shoot an arc for that. And so what I got here is I've marked off the distance here. This is 7 1/4. It's really irrelevant. If you're doing yours, you can just do it relationally with whatever you got going on. So I've got a line here so that I can figure out where on the wood I have a nice piece of wood that I want with the right grain, instead of, just finding a place and dealing with what the wood's doing. Sometimes you have little nicks, sometimes you have little dents, and you want to kind of avoid those things. So what I got here is a string and this line right here, and all I need to do is find where I like the piece of wood and put the pencil on that line and come off perpendicular with my thumb, and I can draw an arc. There you go, there's my bottom shelf. All right, moving forward. All right, there you go. This is the bottom shelf. See all mocked up right there. Nice smooth edges, ran it on the sander. Let's go ahead and get started making these 1x4 sections right here, these planking. We got it mocked up. I'll take the measurements and we'll start cutting that wood. All right, so what we have here is an octagon. You can see we've got, it's not a complete octagon, it doesn't go around, and these are 5 inches and these are 6 inches roughly. I did not lay these out by calculating measurements. I laid these out by figuring out the distance where you can come 3/4 of an inch off of that radius. So they're completely organic measurements. They're not whole measurements, and they're not calculated measurements. But with that said, we do want to get an octagon off of this, and the best way to validate that you have an octagon is with the measurement of 135 degrees. If you were to look at any polygon that has equal sides, let's say a square, and you add all of the corners up, the measurement of those quarters, 90 plus 90 plus 90 plus 90, it'll equal to 360 degrees, right? Oddly enough, that's how many degrees there are in a circle. So basically what you're doing is you're adding 45 every time that you're measuring this. So 45 plus 90 is 135 degrees. So when you're looking at the inside measurements of an octagon, each one of these need to be 135 degrees. That's just kind of an observation. And again, I didn't make these measurements based on pre-measuring. I created them by laying out the shapes inside the parameters of this radius of this arc. And so they're organic. So I'm going to go ahead and take some measurements off of these, and we'll put them up on the miter and we'll start cutting them out. All right, so with all these miters all cut up, and I'm ready to start assembling. I don't want to work on the legs until after I have this assembled and I get a final measurement. Sometimes things adjust a little bit with glue and kerf and you know, the way fitment works. In case you're wondering what this angle is, it turns out that my miter box by Jorgensen, nice little manual miter box, has a setting that clicks in right at 68 degrees. And that happens to be the exact precise angle that you need when you're connecting an octagon. So there you go, 68 degrees. It's not something that you would think that it would be correct, but I guess, you know, with miters you need to have them just a little bit bigger than what they would normally be, so that when they close together, it all comes together. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish the fabrication on this. I'm going to sand a little bit of these rough edges off so that we don't get any kind of you know, wood shavings or anything stuck in the seam. You see, in this miter box does a really good job of cutting a nice clean cut. But we'll clean those up, and then we'll get the gluing going. All right, so here's another little thing that we're going to do here. So I've before I put together the top, I mocked up and marked where the legs will interact with the small table here. Now these will be inserted into a slot in the leg when the legs go on. And so what we're going to do is, inside the leg, I don't care what's going on in there, but on the edge here, I want this edge to have a subtle round over. But I don't want the round over to get to the slot in the leg. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the router between these lines and stop at each line, and that will give me a transition from a round over to a square edge right at the leg interaction. All right, let's get that done. All right, so there you go. So got a little transition between the place where it goes on, and then it goes nice and smooth, goes over, another transition. There you go. Round over bit along the edge here, forward edge. All right. All right, so there you can see I've got the lower box section all glued up and glued to the back of the tabletop here. We've got a round over bit run on the router around the top, and on the little shelf you see I've rounded over except for where the joinery is going to connect on the legs. So on to the legs. I've gone ahead and cut them to length, and you can see that I have transcribed the slots that I'm going to have to cut in here to get these connected to the tabletop, and now each one is custom. Instead of measuring it, like I said, it's organic. When you do your glue up, sometimes things move a little bit, and so you have to take the measurements after you've gone through different steps. It's just been my experience. Now if we were doing this in a mass marketing and you know, you're running off of plans and whatnot, then maybe you might be able to work the design. Here's the front leg for the center. You can see that slot goes right through like that. One of the things that you might have noticed when I was kind of going through, you might notice there's a couple of nails in here. These nails are not going to be visible because the leg, you can see where the overline where the leg is going to go. The leg is going to be covering these. So I was able to throw some brads into that real quick with my pneumatic nailer, and it made that joinery a whole lot easier to make that connection. When I laid these out, I started from the middle because if you make a mistake in any of your angles or any of the glue ups, you don't want them to transmit across a longer area. So if we had like started here and moved around here, and there was a problem with this angle, then by the time we got here, it would have multiplied multiple times before it got over to here. So by starting in the middle and gluing these two here first, and then going to the ends after the fact, that gave us a lot less, impact should there be an error. And you can see there was actually a little bit of difference in the way that I had mocked it up on pencil versus what actually came out. So it's a good thing that I didn't pre-cut those leg joints. Same thing over on this side. So anyway, let's get to some joinery and cut these the slots in these legs, and then we'll check back in with where we're at. All right, so we got the joinery done on the tops. This is for the front piece. See how it is kind of a really minimal cross section there in the front, but it does not poke through, and that will cover up where those brads are. On this leg, I've already done the tapering on the bottom. The idea is that the front face of each of these legs will be straight. See this, the front face is straight, but the back and sides will be tapered. I've got this one here already cut, and I've used it as a prototype on these. You see I've already got it marked where I'm going to knock these off. This is such a small section that I'm just sanding these down on the belt sander and just reducing them as I go. So that'll be the end. I've already cut the slots for the shelf, the low shelf. This is a 1/2-inch slot with the same thickness as the thickness of the wood, and I got those slots cut on all of them, and they will all receive that piece of wood when I get ready to do the assembly. I'm going to go ahead and sand these down and then do some preliminary sanding, and then we'll do the glue up. Alright, so before I do the glue up, I want to do a mock assembly here. Just kind of get an idea of how everything fits. Maybe it's the first time everything's all been together for the first time. I think everything looks pretty good. I got all the proportions down right, but I did make one big mistake. Big mistake. It's a mistake. The shelf is round. The slots are square. So these slots right here have a bit of a gap right there. If I were over to do it again, then I would probably make this notch shallow at one end and deeper at the other end, just to accommodate that. The center one here has a similar issue, although it's not all that pronounced. It has just a little bit of a gap right there. But I'm overall pretty pleased with it. So let's get to gluing it up, and if need be, we can put some putty in there. I don't even know if I need to do that, but then we'll be down to finish sanding and stain. All right, there you go, all glued up, ready to move on to finish. I really like the way that the circle and the octagon work together right there. That structure is kind of neat. The shelf gives the bottom legs a little extra support so that they're nice and sturdy. And because it's a tripod, you don't have to worry about one leg being longer than the other. So you can have a little bit of an error there too. from the opposite side, when you're sitting on the chair, this is what the table will look like, which I think is somewhat classical looking. All right, on to the next phase. All right, here you go with a little color on it. Looks a little dark right now, but once you get the varnish on there, it actually lightens it up a little because it creates some light play. See, still got nice wood grain on there. All right, let's get on to the varnish. All right, so when you do your stain, sometimes it'll reveal like a little bit of glue that prevented the stain from soaking into the wood, and you get these little light spots. A trick that you can use to minimize those or to camouflage them, instead of taking all the stain off and going back to square zero, just get a Sharpie. Here's a little brown Sharpie right here. They actually sell furniture markers for touching up and matching. But this is just a kind of a quickie way to doing it. It does the same kind of thing. All you want to do is add a little color to the light spot, and if you go in the direction of the grain, you can just kind of blend it in a little bit, and it will just look like a piece of lighter piece of grain. And you can actually let it dry a little bit and then stack it up, and it will get darker each time that you do it. See how it's getting a little bit darker every time? Let it dry a little bit. Anyway, it just helps you to minimize those so that they won't stand out. You won't see them from a distance. That looks a lot better than just having a light spot right there. All right, there you go. I'm going to go through and touch up a couple more. You can see I've already done down here where we had to put some putty in. Without knowing it was there, you wouldn't even know that there was a patch of putty in there because I've darkened it up with the Sharpie. All right, so after the first coat of varnish, you really wouldn't expect it to be really shiny on the first coat because the wood's going to absorb a lot. It actually becomes more of a sealer coat. So we have some high grain sandpaper. I think this is some 320. Just to lightly go over it. We're going to take the knobs off of it, and then we'll put another coat on there. Ultimately, we'll probably put more coats on the flat surface, and just have good sealing coats on the vertical surfaces. But the idea behind that is that someone's going to put a glass on there without a coaster or something, and you need to have a really good sealing coat. So the next coats will go on and look a lot shinier. Let's get on to that next one. Here you go, pressed into service. Nice table. Very nice compliment to that Morris chair. We got 2 coats of varnish on these vertical surfaces and 3 coats on the top. You can see the trick with this is to get a good sanding in between coats with a very fine sandpaper, just to knock off any bumps or any ridges. Makes it a lot smoother. Mission accomplished.